G'day and welcome to UX Evenings at Google. My name's Dean Hudson and I'm a UX designer at Google Sydney, working on user-generated content for Google Maps. My team helps people update the world around them by contributing the latest information back to the map, so things like reporting road disruptions, train delays, answering questions, and just generally making edits to the map. I've been working as a designer for around 20 years now in APAC, Europe, and the United States. But I was born and raised here in Sydney, which is the traditional land of the Gadigal people. And the Google Sydney office, where I'm dialing in from today, is located in a beautiful part of the city's waterfront called Parama, which means rocking stone. And this is where the Gadigal people fished, hunted, and gathered for thousands of years. I just want to acknowledge and thank the Gadigal people for taking care of these lands where I get to go to work every day. And I also want to thank all of you for joining us tonight for UX Evenings at Google. It's a speaker series that invites innovators from across different industries to Google to talk about product and design within APAC. And we have three really great speakers for you today. We have Deepa Bachu, who is a UX director at customer engagement at Google. We have Evan Yang, who is the head of growth design at TikTok, and Spencer Lowe, who is the head of regional sustainability at Google. We're stoked to have them all with us today and hear about their thoughts and experiences within UX. But we're also really excited to have all of you join us here today as well. So please introduce yourself to the team and leave your feedback for the speakers in the comments. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps other people discover the content and helps to grow our community here in APAC. But without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker of the evening, Deepa Bachu. So Deepa is an extraordinary products leader with over 25 years of experience at large multinational companies, tech startups, and her own entrepreneurial venture. She's led teams in engineering, design, and product development, creating products that impact millions of customers in over 100 countries. Deepa is truly passionate about using technology to make a difference in people's lives. She's passionate about understanding what customers really need and then exceeding their expectations with innovative solutions. She's also a dedicated mentor and advocate for women in technology. As one of the first women design leaders, Deepa is committed to helping other talented women achieve their full potential. And tonight, she's going to talk to us about measuring the impact of UX. So please, let's give a warm welcome to Deepa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deepa Bachu, and I'm the UX Director at Customer Engagement within Ads. And it's my pleasure to be talking to you about measuring the impact of UX. I think every UXer at some point in their lives have been asked, hey, is there a set of design principles that we can just follow? Or can we make the UI a little prettier so customers can find it easier or more intuitive? We all know that there's a lot more of the science as well as art that goes into creating those delightful experiences and our ability to measure it. I don't subscribe to the viewpoint of, when you have an amazing UX. I think that's a myth. I think we can very actively measure how amazing the design is and how delightful the experience you've created is. So I want to use the next few minutes to talk about my views, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. So, why is it important to measure design success or even customer experience? So, let's say you're creating a product, or you're creating a service, or you're creating a solution. At the end of the day, these innovations, these creations, whether it's a product, service, or a solution, is really focused on customer needs. You're making an impact in the customer's life. If you subscribe to the jobs-based methodology, the customer is hiring you or your product or solution or service to accomplish a certain task. And I think it's really important that we stay focused on what that is for the customer. What is the job? What is the need that you're satisfying through your solution experiences? So I really like to think about customer benefits. And customer benefits actually stand the test of time because it is really the difference that you're making in customers' lives. When you're defining the customer benefit, it's really important to think about why your customer would choose you over possible competitive solutions. And that becomes the benefit that you measure. It is the reason why customers would choose you over competition. And when you have that clear definition of what that benefit is, the reason they chose you, your product, over competition, that becomes the thing you articulate and measure throughout the product development lifecycle. A watch out is for vanity metrics. My favorite pet peeve is really around mobile app. If you talk to folks that are building mobile apps, they talk about the number of downloads. And the downloads, don't get me wrong, is an indication of interest, but it's not an indication of your product successfully meeting the needs that the customer hired you to help solve. There are better metrics that you can look at. For example, daily active use. If people are actively using your product, it's more likely that you're solving an important and an unmet need for your customer. Again, it's not that number of downloads is bad. In my view, it's a vanity metric because it only shows interest versus actual customer benefit. Um, the second thing to think about is, as you have leading indicators like daily active use and monthly active use, they're coming to your product, they're doing something, but what is the actual, benefit that you're creating through your product? Are you saving them time? Are you making them more money? Are you reducing the frequency of bad things happening? Are you increasing the frequency of good things happening through your solution, product, or service? That is what you want to focus on. And customer growth is an indicator. You want to look at how many customers are talking about your product, telling others. We're all familiar with NPS, and I think that is an amazing metric. You've delighted the customer so much with your product, service, or solution that they're telling others about it. So chances are that you've actually met their needs and you've really focused on delivering on the customer benefit. Hygiene factors. This is also another gotcha. If you've used the Herzberg model is something that I'm very fond of, and it's actually based in HR. It talks about why individuals or employees stay at a company. You're talking about employee engagement. But I think the same concept can be very easily extended to customers and through solutions, products, or services that we create for them. On the left side of the Herzberg is hygiene factors. So when you have poor hygiene factors, it decreases employee job satisfaction. For example, you don't have a good environment in which people can work in, you don't have competitive salaries. These are all hygiene factors where you and I know that if we didn't have a good environment, if we couldn't get to work on time, and once we got there, if it was a terrible environment to be in, or we weren't being paid competitively, then it's very likely that we won't have high employee engagement. But just because a company has these things, it doesn't mean you're engaged. And that's where the right hand side comes in, which is the motivating factors that really increase the employee's job satisfaction. Now, I know I talked about the Herzberg more from an employee standpoint, but the same thing can be projected to your products, services, or solutions, where you really look at what are hygiene factors, intuitiveness, one click access. You want people to be able to understand the solution. But what makes them come back? It is that solving that benefit, the customer benefit that we were talking about, the reason they choose you over competition. If you're actively moving the needle for the customer on those customer benefits, you can be sure that they'll come back and you'll have great daily or monthly active use, depending on what your product or solution is really solving for. So the Herzberg is a useful model to think about to say, hey, in this release, what am I What's on my roadmap? What am I releasing? How much of it is hygiene factors versus motivating factors? Another example I can give you is performance that comes very squarely or falls very squarely on the left hand side of the iceberg. It's a hygiene factor. If you don't have it, people will stop using your product. But if you have it, you can't assume that it's going to create delight or even provide the benefit, because that's something that's understood as being hygiene. You want to focus on having that right balance of hygiene factors as well as motivating factors that really solve for the customer benefits. Another favorite of mine is thinking about the elements of value. Now, you're creating a product, a service, or a solution, and you're going to focus on making it the best it can possibly be. But are you stopping short of delighting the customer? You're providing that unexpected delight. You're giving them that emotional benefit that they didn't expect. Often, the best kind of delight is the unexpected delight to create. So, how can you provide this delight? There's the elements of value pyramid that I think is really important. A lot of times, we spend our efforts in the functional bucket. Now, this is important to do, but it's not nearly enough to provide delight. If you go back to Herzberg, it's probably more on the left hand side than it is on the right. You're providing functional benefits. And typically, in my experience, there are three dimensions of providing this functional benefit: it's time, money, and frequency. Frequency, as in reducing the frequency of something bad happening or increasing the frequency of something good happening. All of these are functional metrics, and you can see several examples of those. When you provide these functional metrics, you want to make sure that you're also providing that emotional benefit where people feel safe, people feel confident. If you look at what we do at Google and Google Ads, the team that I belong to, you want to make sure that small businesses and large businesses alike feel confident that their marketing goals are being met through your Google Ads. And so emotion is important. It's a very, very important thing to measure. And that metric may be hard and more qualitative in nature, but still a very useful metric for you to look at. But delight comes from actually making those life-changing, improvements through your product. If you're making the small business more successful, if you're making the small business more competitive with their peers, now these are life-changing type impact that you can have and actively measure. So I would encourage all of you to look at the elements of value and ensure that you've got the functional covered, like, really, really important to have done, but also look at the emotional and the. Now, the nirvana would be to try to get to social impact, but even if you get to life changing, that's a really, really good place to be. And so, delight comes from not only meeting the customer benefit in a functional way, but also in an emotional way that can have a life changing impact. One of the things that makes me really proud to work at Google Ads is the fact that, we're giving small businesses a chance. They often are the individual that's doing multiple roles, wearing multiple hats. And if through our products, we can help them market their products or services better, we've now given them the ability to do things that they desire, to realize their dreams in ways that we're able to help them. And so those customer benefits actually go right through from functional to emotional to life changing. And I think that that's where you want to be to truly delight your customers. So the customer benefit metrics itself, this is something that is based on Intuit's Delight Pyramid. You want to start with delivering customer benefits, like we talked about. We want to be able to focus on the reason customers choose us over competition. That's the base of that pyramid. You only use products that actually make a difference and provide that benefit to you. You want to ensure that you build customer delight. We talked about the elements of value and how you can go beyond the functional or the functional benefits that your product, service, or solution provides. And finally, you want to evoke that positive emotion. It starts to get to the top end of the value pyramid where you're focused on positive emotion. So I just sort of want to talk about different elements. Just want to go ahead and repeat them a little bit. So at the bottom, the first stage is to ensure that you're delivering your customer benefit. We talked about the Herzberg model. You don't want to only focus on hygiene, you want to also focus on motivational factors. That's really what it is about delivering customer benefits. If you don't deliver customer benefits, you're going to have what we call a leaky bucket. People are going to be attriting and using other solutions instead of yours. So you want to start there. You want to ensure that you're not focused on vanity metrics like number of downloads, but you're actually looking at active use and measuring your metrics through the various elements that were shown in the value pyramid. Next, you want to bring on the customer delight. It has to be easier than expected. It has to bring in that unexpected delight. And then you want to get to a stage where you can evoke positive emotion. All of these are covered in as examples in the elements of value for you to take and make it yours, of course, depending on your customer base and your product, service, or solution. And the higher you go through the pyramid, the more value you're delivering for your customers. And the initial few, the bottom of the pyramid, tend to be more functional elements. And as you go higher to the top of the pyramid, you're looking more at the emotional benefits. I want to give you some quick examples of what that might look like. I'm going to start from the bottom. When you're delivering customer benefit, you're going to get more booking, more revenue, more profit. These tend to be more shareholder. All of us are shareholders of the company that we work in through our various programs in terms of stocks. And so it's important that we're moving the needle in terms of revenue, profit, or bookings. But there might be a lot of leading indicators to these lagging indicators of bookings, revenue, and profit that we want to look at. The next way you're building delight is really about the ecosystem. You have more paid subscribers, you're getting more employee referrals, you're getting more partner contracts. That's what success looks like. But ultimately, you're evoking positive emotion when you have that connect from the customers to your brand. You're delivering joy, you're building trust, you're giving them confidence. Those tend to be the important metrics that you would measure, either in a qualitative or quantitative way. Customer love metrics. So, you've created the solution, it's delivering on the customer benefits, but you brought in delight. And ultimately, you want to focus on customer love metrics. And I'm using that word very, very thoughtfully. You want your customers to love your product, service, or solution. So, how do you do that? You focus on the end to end journey. You look at every touch point. We talk about the customer journey maps. We call them CUJs at Google. You want to look at that entire journey and ensure that you've brought in delightful touch points across the journey, not just when you sell the product, not just when you use the product, but also when you support. You want to look end to end through the customer's journey and think about every touch point with your brand and ensure that you're reinforcing the benefits of your product, service, or solution and constantly communicating it to them so they see the value.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Deepa. That was great. I really enjoyed it. But I'm going to be honest, a lot of the models and frameworks you mentioned are totally new to me. I'd love to hear from the rest of you watching along. Let us know in the comments if you've ever used any of the frameworks that Deepa mentioned in your work. It's really great to hear how these frameworks and metrics are helping your team deliver real value for businesses using Google Ads. I'm sure creating life-changing value for real people through better design is something I think we can all aspire towards. So great job. Okay, our next speaker is Evan Yang, who's the head of growth design at TikTok. Evan leads both product and creative design and excels at developing strategic design solutions, optimizing workflows, and inspiring collaboration across global teams in the US, EMEA, and APAC. He's passionate about emerging technologies and crafts delightful designs that captivate and excite users. This evening, he's going to share some of his work at TikTok and how his team drives worldwide user growth. So please welcome Evan Yang.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about a topic that is crucial to TikTok's ongoing success, driving user growth worldwide. As a platform, TikTok has transferred into a global phenomenon, reaching and connecting people from all walks of life, no matter their location, language, or background. But behind this success is a constant challenge. How do we continue expanding, evolving, and capturing the attention of users in an ever-changing digital landscape? Today, I want to explore with you some of the strategies and the innovations that we have in this company, in this team, and more importantly, how we can maintain this momentum as we look towards the future. I'm Evan Yang, the head of growth design at TikTok. Before joining TikTok, I led the design of Soda Music, a Chinese music app, and was responsible for the homepage design for Alipay FinTech. Before that, I led the design initiatives at AliExpress, work across various categories like fashion and high-tech, and oversaw the design system and the core user flow. Now, let's dive into TikTok. In my team, we have 16 designers, a mix of UX and creative designers. We are responsible for 7 different types of devices, including tablet, desktop, TikTok Lite, TikTok Point, and a few others you may not have heard of, like Apple Vision Pro. We collaborate with people from 8 different locations, including Shanghai, Beijing, Tokyo, and more. With such a diverse team, we face a number of challenges. Our audience spans the globe, so we need to account for different cultures. And we also have devices with different hardwares in different languages. And additionally, we have stakeholders work across different time zones, which adds to the complexity. Now, let's take a look at the bigger picture. TikTok isn't just the main app. We also have TikTok Points, an app tailored for price-sensitive users, currently being launched in Japan and Korea. Then there is TikTok Lite, an Android-specific app designed for low-end devices, featuring a small package size but faster performance. Today, I will be discussing the main TikTok app, TikTok Points, and TikTok Lite. When it comes to TikTok main app, we follow a design-driven process in the UG team, which consists of 5 key steps. The first one, define and research. UX designers collaborate with PMs to identify problems and research solutions. And the second one is design and prototype. We usually create 2 to 3 prototypes to gather feedback, and then move on to the feedback iteration. We refine the design based on the inputs of others, and later we will do the presentation and the communication. We maintain open communication with stakeholders. And finally, we will share our OKR and launch the project. We will ensure everyone is on the same page by sharing our OKR with cross-function teams and drive the project forward. Now move on to the TikTok tablet. This is a concept design we have been working on. We have focused on bringing full screen mode to the tablet and addressing as many issues as possible. We have also redesigned the store page and are working towards a new feed experience. If you haven't already, check out TikTok tablet to see these changes. In addition to tablet, we have also enhancing TikTok.com. We have added features like a mini player and future plans, including redesigned navigation and add hotkey for a smoother user experience. We have also created a user experience for TikTok OS features. For example, if you upload a video, you will see progress update through the dynamic island on your iPhone. We are constantly looking to innovate, and this cross-platform collaboration helps bring fresh ideas to life. Oh, and TikTok is now available on Apple Vision Pro. If you have got one, you will find using TikTok an immersive experience. We have touched on iOS, iPadOS, and desktop. In the future, we may expand to the platforms like watchOS, CarPlay, and Android Auto. Okay, let's talk about TikTok points. We are going to talk more about localization on this part. What's challenging for this part is besides UX designers, we always work closely with creative designers as well as branding and creative design teams. That's the reason we have this new process. In this new process, we are introducing localization, scaling agile. In this process, we are bringing content designers and the local branding and creative designers at the very beginning of the projects, so they can get more background information of these projects. And inside of TikTok design team, we also invite creative designers to the project at the very first time, so they can be with us before everything gets started. And later we will have the BRD reviews. After BRD reviews, we designers always ship new designs, but before it went online, we have a new process named localization user testing to make sure our user have the positive feedback for the new design. So for the online, we have Facebook group who will attend our usability testing, and offline, we will provide prototype demos to them. So after the localization testing, we will involve the design that we have. By doing this, we have successfully launched the Points app in Japan, as well as in Korea. And we have made a lot of campaigns in both Japan and the Korean. And as you know, for many of the Japanese companies, they have a character design, and we do have a pet for the Japan Points app. This is how it looks like. And not only we are making them for the characters, but also we want to make it natural for the users inside of the TikTok app to use them. Recently, I have viewed the data of our TikTok Points app that's in Japan and the Korean, and it turned out to be not so bad, right? And then let's talk about TikTok Lite. We will talk about accessibility in this part. So the most challenging part for this is we are far away from the user and we don't know who they are. So that is the reason why we build this remote user testing process. In this process, we will involve PMs and the user research team combined with us. So we will first have the design mockups. Let's say we have a new design for the TikTok Lite, and then we will define the user tasks and design the questionnaires, and then let the user research team help us with that, and then set up usability testing and share them to the users with certain platforms, and then we get the results and analyze, And finally, we design and do the online test. In this way, we have the new design for the pop-ups. We have also the new design for the snack bar. Let's take the snack bar for instance. Before, we have the dark background of the snack bar with white text on it. But later we figure out because most of the users of TikTok Lite have the low-end devices with horrible display. So we changed the design to a light background with darker text, and the user really liked them, and the data turned out to be so good. And we also changed the follow button, the shape of it. That is the first part, readability and the touchability. And when we design for the TikTok Lite users, we should care more about the small screen experience, such as reduce some of the complexity of it. Let's say we just remove the translation and the publish date of the TikTok Lite, and we are trying to reduce some of the coverage with stroke icon. And you should pay attention to the height of the design when you design for the SSA area. As for the localization experience, we should always pay attention to the dark skin experience. That is the reason why we always have auto flash and the effect optimization for those users. And also, we are supposed to make all the functions discoverable, just like add a post test to the icon, or replace find others with add friends to make it more clear. And the process and the feedback as well. We changed the dark background to the light background to make users read more clearly. What's more in the future? Because we are constantly adding more new features or adding motions to the design system nowadays. But for TikTok Lite, what we are going to do is to have a more lightweight design system. We are going to reduce many of the functions or motions of our design system and make it a more smaller one, specifically for TikTok Lite. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you, guys.
Great, thanks Evan. That was awesome. Super interesting to hear TikTok's design process and the challenge of building for a global audience with different needs, cultures, and even devices. I really love how your team thinks about localization and accessibility right from the very beginning to ensure you have an engaging and personalized product for each region. And those thoughtful design choices for people using lower end devices is really great to see as well. It's no wonder really that TikTok is one of the fastest growing social media platforms in the world. So a really great job by you and the team. Okay, last but not least, let me introduce our final speaker for the evening, Spencer Lowe. Spencer is a true leader in the field of sustainability, and he heads up Google's sustainability efforts across the entire Asia-Pacific region. His team leads sustainability strategy and programs on carbon, circular economy, water, product integration, reporting, and engagement. He's particularly interested in how we can use cutting-edge technology, like AI, to solve some of our biggest environmental challenges. Before Google, Spencer was Chief Sustainability Officer at SATS, a Singapore-listed aviation services and food solutions company, where he led their transformation into a global sustainability leader. He's also held senior management roles at other tech companies, living and working across Asia-Pacific, including Japan, China, Hong Kong, Thailand, Australia, and India. And tonight, Spencer will be interviewed by Julie Schiller, who some of you may recognize from past UX evenings. Spencer will share his thoughts on building digital products with sustainability in mind. So without further ado, over to you, Julie and Spencer.
Hi, everybody. It's Julie Schiller. I'm so excited to have a chance today to interview Spencer. So as you heard, Spencer is a leader inside of our Google community, sharing about how he's been working inside Google. And you might remember me from past UX evenings where we've talked about user experience. In this session, we're going to dive into understanding more about how sustainability is connected to user experience and how we can build digital products with sustainability in mind. So let's get started. Spencer, please tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a bit about Google's sustainability work.
First of all, thank you so much, Julie, for having me here, even though I'm not a UX expert. But sustainability is a very, very important topic, and I think UX is a big part of actually making it work especially how everyone wants and needs to be involved. So let's take a step back and let me explain how Google looks at our sustainability ambitions. So we actually have two major pillars as we look at sustainability, and they are our products and our operations. The really exciting part is our products, because we have products that billions of people use every day. And our ambition is that we set ourselves is how do we make sure that through our products and services, whether it's Google Maps, Search, Cloud, etc., we allow individuals and partners and cities and governments and companies to actually reduce 1 gigaton of emissions every year by the year 2030. And that's equivalent to the emissions of a country like Japan. So it's a large ambition, and one that we need to work with partners, etc., on to make real. That's a really exciting part. At the same time, there's our operations, and that's a part where we have to be very responsible in terms of making sure that the way Google operates and our entire supply chain and a value chain of data centers and devices that we sell, for example, the Pixel phones and Nest devices, that as we operate as a business, that we are responsible, and for that we have a net zero goal by 2030. And of course, we also have goals around water stewardship, the circular economy, and protection for biodiversity. So these are the two main pillars with some pretty exciting goals.
Wow, Spencer, that's amazing. I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more about that. So as you know, I'm a UX researcher, and I sit out here in Singapore. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how Google's sustainability goals are integrated here in APAC itself.
Well, thanks for that great question. It's first of all, I'd like to say that it's not just me saying it, but many experts in the field have said that for the world to succeed in that transition to a more sustainable future, that work will be, that war, if we can, will be won or lost here in Asia and Asia Pacific more broadly. The reason is that in the APAC region, we have more than half of the world's population. It's more than half of the world's emissions. This is the region which actually is responsible for a disproportionate amount of manufacturing. And so it actually, a lot of that manufacturing creates carbon emissions that are actually in service of the global economy. And so for all those reasons, it's a really critical region. It's also the region with the fastest growing energy demand. And it's tied to the fact that a lot of markets here are what we call growth markets. They're also very much focused on better jobs, more competitive economies, upskilling. And so there's this growth agenda as well, which is really important, because it's a false choice to say, development versus sustainability. It's how can you be developed and be more sustainable at the same time. So these are some of the particularities that we have to take into consideration in APAC. Lots of growth markets, but there are other aspects too. For example, agriculture is a really important sector. It emits a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, methane, etc. But it's also the largest job sector in APAC. It's the largest sector, so it's about the same number of jobs as the next two, which would be industry and retail, and the wholesale and retail trade added together. So when you think about that and the just transition, you also think about UX, perhaps, because a lot of the users that could benefit from the insights that allow them to be more sustainable in their agricultural practices, you have to think about minority languages. You have to think about mobile only, because a lot of users in agricultural areas would only have the small devices, and they could be bandwidth restricted. So from a US perspective, how do you make sure that you can provide them information, through, say, Gen AI that allows them to make more and better choices when it comes to sustainable practices?
That's exciting, Spencer. Can you tell us more about Google's view on how user experience is driving sustainability and climate practices today? What has Google been doing in this space?
A lot, and you would know a lot of it too. So please jump in. But I'd like to start first with an important principle. Google takes its objectivity very carefully. we are an organization that provides unbiased, objective information. So internally we have a very important principle, which is we should never have our finger on the scale. But that said, we want to make sure that the information we provide is relevant, in fact, contextually relevant, accurate, and if it's accurate, hopefully it makes it easier for people to make certain decisions, especially when they're searching for information related to sustainable choices. So I'll give you a few examples of that. One would be, I just spoke about searching for sustainable products and solutions. So electric vehicles. Many people around the world are looking for electric vehicles. Sometimes, in maybe North America and Europe, it's normally people switching, cars. They've had, they've driven their internal combustion engine variants, and now they're looking for EVs. But in the growth markets, oftentimes it's first-time buyers. And they may not be searching for four-wheelers where you have your Teslas. And of course, now the market's more competitive. There's BYD and there are other brands available. But the EV market, again, it's also very, very vibrant, lots of models, etc. And on top of it, the total cost of ownership really changes depending on where you are, because many governments, for example, in India, are providing grants and different forms of support so that people are more incented to purchase an EV. Now, all this information could create information overload. People don't know where to start, and they're making comparisons. They could be getting information about subsidy levels in another part of India, for example. So at Google, to make it contextually relevant based on where you are, and of course, there are ways of making sure that that we identify the desired results accurately. You can say, I'm looking for this type of information, this type of EV, I should say. It's a two-wheeler. What's my total cost of ownership? And our search engine now actually provides that in a verified, accurate manner. So that's one example. Then for people that already have their vehicles, many of them would use Google Maps to figure out how to get from A to B. And for this, we've realized that it's quite easy to nudge people if they have the right information to actually make more sustainable choices. For example, oftentimes it's defaulted in your Google Maps, you would take the fastest route. And you don't want to be there a minute or two later. But sometimes to save those couple minutes, you're taking highways, you're going up and down hills because it's more direct, and you're going through areas where the traffic patterns just create more stop and start, which is more actually, which is worse for the environment in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So at Google, we've made it really easy, as a lot of calculations in the background in optimization to understand the traffic patterns and the type of vehicle you're using and the terrain, which are all unique aspects of the world that Google understands well, to propose what we call eco-friendly routes, so that you could maybe take 3 to 4 minutes longer, but you could save a lot of carbon. But then how we show this information with a little leaf to say, okay, this is the eco-friendly route, but in a very easy to understand, in a way that's really easy to understand with your carbon savings, we're finding that people are responding to it really well. I mean, some of us would objectively say people really like the savings. I mean, if they're not emitting that much carbon, they're burning less fuel. But we find that sort of information is less motivating. It's really about, oh, I actually saved that many tons of carbon. And I think it incents the good types of behavior, but yet it's still objective and neutral. And so these are some of the aspects that, how I think Google we're integrating with making use of UX, user-friendly design, in support of sustainable choices.
Wonderful. That's really good news, because one of the things I've been thinking in this space lately is how any job, anywhere, can be a climate job. And this is really a call to the other UXers out there to think inside the product you're building and the work you're doing. How can you help embed more of these kind of nudges, these more contextually ideas that Spencer's talking about here. If you're in somewhere related to shopping or travel or investments or anything, you can really imagine how making these kind of suggestions to people and helping them see the bigger picture of their actions can be important for helping individuals make great decisions, which is, I think, so much of what we talk about inside of user experience. That's wonderful.
If I may jump in, I think the one thing that I think we've learned, and maybe it's important to call out for the audience, is the fact that it's often risky when one gets prescriptive or preachy about the right types of choices, or worse yet, if you default people to what you think is the better option and without informing them. I think sometimes things can backfire. You do want to be transparent. You do want to nudge. I love the word that you use there. But at the same time, you have to let people realize that they're in control. You're just making it easy for them.
It's really beautiful. Are there any other examples you might want to share with us about how user experience has helped highlight climate-friendly products and services inside Google?
Oh, absolutely. Let me perhaps just close out with on the eco-friendly routing, just to say, well, does it have an impact? It's still scaling up. We're rolling it out in more countries and making it available for two-wheelers in more countries, because not everyone drives four-wheelers. In many parts of Asia and the rest of the world, we use two-wheelers. But collectively, since the feature was launched in 2021, we've saved almost 3 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's about 650,000 fuel-based cars off the roads in a year. So that is impact. And you asked for perhaps another example. I might like to point out our Google Nest thermostats. These aren't available around the world, but many of the audience would know of them. These Nest devices actually use data and to help you save electricity and therefore reduce emissions. Because they're smart, they can look at the patterns of usage of when you turn the temperature up or down by time of day, by day of the week, to understand your preferences, so that you can feel comfortable with minimal fidgeting or with the settings. But compared with but that's a sort of dynamic tool. So if you compare that with just what happened before smart thermostats, just left the you're setting at your preferred setting the whole time. I think collectively, just in 2023, Google Nest would have saved 20 billion kilowatt hours of electricity. That's about 7 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's roughly equivalent to the electricity use consumption of a country like Portugal. So these are examples of where making it easy, intuitive, and contextually relevant really helps nudge people into more sustainable choices.
That is really cool. That is so exciting. And I guess I just have a couple, last questions and maybe some tips you can give the audience, thinking about what does Google do to kind of educate and empower our users to make sustainable choices? And are there any tools that they might be able to utilize as well as part of that process?
Great question. Thank you. We've talked about the B2C part. Through eco-friendly routing or the Nest, Google Nest example, or people searching for electric vehicles. I mentioned some of the do's and don'ts, at least how we see it, in terms of integrating and not the green options, but making it really easy to understand the impact, like how much carbon you would have saved, or you are saving, etc. What's actually more interesting, or just as interesting, I should say, is the B2B part. Google, of course, we were built as a consumer business, but we have a large and growing B2B business through Google Cloud, where we're working with companies that want to put their operations and their computes on the cloud. And here we have realized that it's really important to allow our users to be more carbon aware, so that they can make more sustainable choices. And what do I mean by being carbon aware? As a developer, you write code, but as coders know, not all codes are built the same way. It could be more or less efficient in terms of getting the desired outcome of that code. And so we now have tools that allow folks that are writing code or training AI models to know how much, what the energy consumption is, and therefore what the carbon emissions are of that code and that type of training. So for Google, we have been an AI company for a long time, before the craze about Gen AI. So we do have a lot of internal knowledge about more efficient, more carbon efficient coding. We're part of the Green Software Foundation, but we also make freely available toolkits, I should say guides for developers to think about going about their coding and training and architecting differently to be greener. So if you just search on Google Go Green Software, you actually see a link where you can click to download guides that actually give really specific and helpful tips and information on how you can develop software in a more green fashion.
Wow. Okay, Spencer, I know we're running a little short on time, but if you didn't catch that, it's Go Green Software Guide. So please look that up. I think it's a huge opportunity for us. I just want to say a huge thank you to you for spending your time with us and helping to think about how different UXers might be able to integrate sustainability into their work, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's thinking about their B2B work, their B2C work, and some great examples that you brought up from internal examples. Is there anything last things you want to close out with, Spencer?
Well, thank you, Julie. I would say something to think about is the impact of AI. That is having a really big impact on what we think are potential outcomes in terms of sustainability. And I'm sure for the UX community, you're also thinking about how it might impact your work. But do think about how it can impact your impact on sustainability as well.
Thanks, Julie. And thank you, Spencer, for the fascinating insights into the work you're doing in sustainability. Super interesting stuff there. I love the eco-friendly routing in Google Maps and how the information is presented in just a really simple, transparent way to help people make those sustainable choices. And it's amazing to hear the scale of impact these projects are having as well. It must be such a rewarding project to be working on. I also really love Julie's provocation that any job can be a climate job. And I was thinking perhaps that can be combined with the values pyramid that Deepa shared earlier, or maybe it could be built into the design process somehow, like Evan has done with localization. And that brings us to the end of our evening tonight. I want to thank all of our speakers this evening, Deepa, Evan, and Spencer. I certainly learned a lot from all of you, and it's always great to hear stories from other UXers in our APAC community, so thank you again. And I also want to give a big thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We're always blown away by the support from this community, and we look forward to sharing another UX evenings with you soon. That's all from me. Have a great night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.